Once you begin gathering materials and resources for your research project, it's important to analyze each resource carefully and make sure that you're getting information that's reliable. One of the things that you can take a look at is to check the author's credentials. Remember, credentials means the same thing as qualification or background training. So if a person is writing about a certain topic, you want to make sure that that person is well trained in that area and they're not just making up facts. There's several different things that you can take a look at in a person's credentials. One thing that you can check is, do they have any background training in that specific topic that they're talking about? Do they hold any licenses, professional licenses, or are they certified in any certain area? So for example, maybe if you're going to write about economics and you're writing about balancing a budget, you might want someone who has some sort of business license, or they have some background training in business, or maybe they're a certified public accountant so that you know that they've worked with budgets before. Another thing that you can take a look at is the author's education. What sort of things and where have they gone to school for, and where have they gotten their education? Perhaps they are trained to be a doctor. Perhaps they're trained to be a lawyer. And if you were writing about those areas, you would consider that good credentials. Another thing to take a look at is, what profession does the writer hold? And again, you're going to choose things that fit with your topic. So if I was going to write about a health issue, for example, about whether or not people should always have the flu shot, I would want to get my information from someone who has been to school and has been trained to become a doctor, and he's a licensed doctor, or someone who has been in pharmacy, so they've researched different types of vaccinations. All those would be strong credentials for that type of topic. So today what I'd like to show you is an example of an article that I found, and the issue that's being debated is one that's talked about a lot lately, and that's whether or not making school start at later times is beneficial to teenagers. And I think that's probably a topic that's close to everyone's heart, especially if you're in online learning. You know that we don't have that specific issue, but it's an important one that's been talked about quite a bit. So I'm going to show you an article that I found, and this one's set up nicely because right in the article they show you two different points of view. So the question once again is, should high school students have a later start to the school day? Then they present points of view from both sides of the issue. So you have someone who's on the pro side that says, yes, students should have a later start to the school day. And you have someone on the con side who's saying, no, that they should not start later in the school day. You should not change the current start times. So I'm just going to go through, skim this article quickly. I know it's probably difficult for you to read the full article here, but I just want to give you the general idea of how I would analyze the credentials of these two people. So if you take a look on the left-hand side on the pro column, the yes column, this was written by a man named Russell Rosenberg. And you can see that he strongly supports having that later start to the school day. He says more sleep means improved academic performance. I'm going to scroll down on this page and just show you, I've got his credentials down here highlighted. Remember, credentials now means that background training, his qualifications. It says he holds a PhD. He is a board-certified sleep specialist and chairman of the National Sleep Foundation, and that's a nonprofit organization supporting public education regarding sleep, health, and safety. So, even without reading this full article, I'd ask myself, is this person qualified to talk about sleep? And would he be qualified to make a statement that says more sleep means improved academic performance? Well, I think that he would. He holds a PhD, he holds a position on a place that does sleep research. So I would think that he has some good background. And so anything he has to say on this, I think would be pretty believable. And when I go in and look at the article, and I've highlighted some parts here for you, he makes very strong statements. So if you look at what's highlighted in yellow there, it says, numerous studies have demonstrated that delayed school start times are associated with increased total sleep and improved academic performance. That's his argument. He says there's numerous studies out there that prove this. Then everything that I've highlighted in blue here cites a specific study. So he cites a study by a Dr. Kyla Wallstrom, and she actually did research on the Minneapolis Public School District that went ahead and did later start times, and they've analyzed the results of that. He goes on to cite another study by Dr. Amy Wolfson, and a study that she did with the 7th and 8th graders. So even the pieces of information that he's citing in the article cite other people who have good credentials, good background for talking about sleep research and sleep impairment and that type of thing. So overall, I would give him a thumbs up. I think he is a good resource to use. And if I was going to be writing a paper about why schools should start later, I'd feel good about citing him. Let's go ahead and take a look at the con side. And let's see who's speaking for this. Now, this is a person named Michael Monaco. And we're going to scroll down and take a look now. They list his credentials underneath the article here as well. It says he is a sophomore at the College of William and Mary. He attended Hayfield Secondary School in Fairfax County, Virginia, where start times were hotly debated, and ultimately a proposal to change start times was rejected. Now, when I take a look at this, he does have some background in the topic. He attended a school where they debated start times, but it didn't say that he was really involved in it. He is going to college, but we don't know what he's studying there. And he's a sophomore, so he's been at college for 2 years. I would be a little more reluctant saying that this person has strong credentials to speak about start times for school. True, he's experienced it, kind of, because the school district he attended wanted to change the times, but ultimately they didn't. So he's heard about changing start times, but he hasn't really studied them, and he hasn't truly experienced them. So what we can do now is just take a quick look at his arguments, just like we did for Dr. Rosenberg's arguments. So again, I've highlighted in yellow one of his arguments. And one of his main arguments is changing high school start time triggers a series of negative externalities. And what he means by that is that when school starts late, it affects many, many other things. So this sounds like a good argument to me. And then he goes on to say what those effects are. He said later start times would put more buses on the roads, closer to rush hour, making traffic worse. It makes it harder for childcare arrangements. It makes it harder on school transportation budgets. Makes it harder for students to work part-time. But he doesn't give you any specific examples of any of those things actually happening. Now, I would believe that changing the school start time might affect those things, but he's not showing me anything specific. So does it really make rush hour worse? And does it really make it harder for childcare arrangements if school's starting later? And does it really affect school transportation budgets, or can they rework it so it doesn't? He's got the arguments there, but because he doesn't have strong credentials and because he's not citing specific things, I would be more reluctant to use him as a resource if I was arguing against starting school later. And hopefully you can see the difference in credentials between these two. Now, I was surprised that they chose these two to go head-to-head on a question. Looking back again, if I just look at those qualifications, you have a doctor with a PhD, and then you have a student. So their qualifications are pretty unequal, I would think. Their credentials are unequal. So again, just in summary, if I was using this issue for my research project, should high school students have a later start to the school day? And if I supported this, if I was pro, I would definitely go ahead and use Russell Rosenberg as one of my resources because he has good credentials. However, if I was doing the same research project, but I was on the con side and I thought that it wouldn't be good to have a later start to the school day, I wouldn't necessarily use Michael Monaco as one of my resources, just because his arguments are not supported by fact, and probably even more so because his credentials are lacking. He's a student. He was in a district that thought about changing school times, but they ultimately didn't. So he doesn't have very strong credentials. So while you are looking for your resources, these are some things to keep in mind. And the more you do it, the easier it's going to become. And again, if you have questions, make sure you always contact your teacher.